Hello, everyone. It is John from A Breath of Fresh Sports, sort of straying away from the podcast today, making a sort of different video. And today's video is going to be circled around The Last Dance, which is a recently released documentary essentially based around Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls during their 1998 season. I mean, it was a little biased in my opinion. A lot of people are kind of blowing things out of proportion. I think it's become very overrated, and I think people are using it to overrate Michael Jordan. And essentially, it was called The Last Dance because everyone knew it was going to be their last season together, so head coach Phil Jackson decided he would name the season The Last Dance. So hence, that's where the documentary got its name, but it wasn't a very good name because it wasn't really about the Bulls' 1998 season. It essentially became a Michael Jordan, praise fest, where rather than covering the entire team as a whole, they kind of just sat there talking about how great Michael Jordan was and how bad everyone else was. And obviously, when you make a little mini-series that was as heavily watched as this, some teammates are going to be upset, and we've seen that. Multiple respected former teammates of Michael Jordan, the main one being Scottie Pippen, was very unhappy with his portrayal throughout the documentary, and I can really see why. Like right out the gate in episode 1, Jordan called Pippen selfish, which I believe is a very outlandish claim that holds virtually no weight to it. When you look at the fact that while Jordan was winning the scoring titles, Scottie Pippen was leading the team in steals, assists, and doing the dirty work on defense. And he really never got the credit he deserved, in my opinion. And a specific example I like to look to is when Jordan retired for the first time, the Bulls were without him during the 1994 season, and Scottie Pippen finally broke out and had a monstrous season. He led the Bulls to 55 wins. They made a relatively good playoff run. They lost to the eventual Eastern Conference champion Knicks in 7 games. So there's no shame in losing to the team that won the conference and ultimately fell just a couple points short of winning a championship. And he did that without Jordan. Scottie essentially escaped from Michael Jordan's shadow for the first time in his career, and he took his opportunity and ran with it. Now, when Jordan decided he was done batting .200 in the minor leagues and decided he wanted to shoot three-pointers again, he showed up, and wouldn't you know it, despite his own personal success and the fact he proved he could win without Jordan, Scottie Pippen happily handed him the keys to the kingdom and was once again relegated to being the Robin to Jordan's Batman. How can you call that selfish when Scottie Pippen proved that he can win big without you? And yes, obviously they didn't make it to the finals, but it is widely known that there were a couple of blown calls in Game 7 against the Knicks, and if those calls were actually called the way they should have been, there's a good chance that the Chicago Bulls are going to the NBA Finals, and a lot of people would say them against the Houston Rockets would have been a great series. So how can you sit there and call Scottie Pippen a quote, selfish player when you left, he had the best season of his career, and then he still let you come back? I'm not going to say he let him come back because obviously that wasn't Scottie's call, but he didn't sit there and complain when he was forced to be the number 2 again. He embraced his role once again, led the team in assists and steals, and wouldn't you know it, Chicago wins 3 more championships, with Scottie Pippen, as always, playing a vital role in that. And this wasn't just Scottie Pippen. Another really big player was Horace Grant, who played with the Bulls for the beginning half of his career and ultimately won 3 championships in Chicago. And he was on the team that three-peated from 1991 to 1993. And no one would really argue against the fact that Grant was the 3rd best player during the initial three-peat. During their 3 championship runs, he averaged 13 points and 9 rebounds. So he really solidified himself as the 3rd best player on a championship team behind Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. And rather than pointing out the fact that, hey, Horace Grant was a good player. He played a crucial role in us winning championships, and he really handled the dirty work on the rebounds while Michael and Scottie handled scoring and such. He instead accused him of essentially being a snitch and ratting out Jordan to a reporter named Sam Smith, who would subsequently write a book called The Jordan Rules, in which he painted Michael Jordan in a very unfavorable manner and kind of called out his bad tendencies and maybe the fact he was a bad teammate. And wouldn't you know it, during a documentary where a book like The Jordan Rules could be used to make Jordan look bad, what does he do? He takes a teammate that very much helped him throughout his career, and he accused him of essentially betraying him and the entire Bulls locker room. And that was really the common theme of this documentary, was that at pretty much anyone who could have made Jordan look bad in any way, they took them, they tried to tarnish their name, and they ignored essentially every good thing that player ever did. And it wasn't just players. I look at someone like Jerry Krause, who was the Bulls general manager throughout the bulk of Jordan's career in Chicago. He essentially acquired every big piece during those championship runs that was not Michael Jordan. Like, if you go down the list, he drafted Horace Grant, he drafted B.J. Armstrong, he traded for Scottie Pippen, rather. He signed Ron Harper, he traded for Dennis Rodman. It's very clear that without Jerry Krause, Michael Jordan does not have 6 championships. And rather than pointing out the fact that Krause had a very keen eye for scouting talent, they decided to make him seem like a buffoon and essentially scapegoat him as the reason the dynasty fell apart. And I'll admit, Krause played a very big part in that. But there's no doubt, in my personal opinion, Chicago wasn't going to win another championship. They were getting old. They had barely beaten the Jazz. Quite frankly, Michael Jordan pushed off on Byron Russell. There should have been a Game 7. Who knows what happens in Game 7? And a lot of people seem to ignore the fact that Greg Popovich, Tim Duncan, David Robinson, and the San Antonio Spurs were on the rise. It's not crazy to say that even if Krause had kept the team together, there wouldn't have been any more championships in Chicago. And there were quite a few instances in which Krause was right and Jordan was wrong. The team had drafted European big Toni Kukoc, and for years it was Krause heavily recruiting Kukoc to come to the USA and play with the Bulls. And for years Jordan was against it and even had a personal vendetta against Kukoc in the Olympics during the Dream Team years. And, when Jordan retired for the first time, Kukoc finally came to the USA, played for the Bulls, and he became an extremely crucial piece off their bench. He was a 13-point per game scorer during their 96-98 three-peat. He was arguably their best bench player during their final 3 championships. So that was a very clear instance in which Jordan was wrong for not wanting Kukoc, and Krause, once again, like he always had scouted of talent, and once again surrounded Jordan with a very key player to help him win championships. But rather than addressing the fact that something good could have happened that he didn't play a part of, he instead tarnished Krause's name, and instead of acknowledging the fact that he always surrounded him with the absolute best supporting cast, he decided to essentially say that he ruined the latter half of Michael's career, which is simply not true. And a lot of people are like, oh, I feel bad for Michael Jordan, and they're really taking a look at this documentary like it's a documentary. It's not. This is a very biased piece of propaganda, in my opinion. Scottie Pippen was not the whiny, unreliable sidekick that this so-called documentary made him out to be. Horace Grant was a very good player. He even made an all-star appearance, and we're just calling him a snitch. And Jerry Krause just might be the best, maybe I would probably say second best general manager of all time. And rather than giving him some credit, we're sitting here talking about how he ruined the Bulls, when in fact there would have never been a dynasty without Jerry Krause. So if you're one of those people who's going to sit there and take this documentary to heart, you just need to look at the facts. And I understand that there are going to be a lot of Jordan fans who are triggered, but that's just the facts are facts, and I'm sorry if you don't see it that way. Anyways, thank you for watching. If you're interested in more videos like this, feel free to hit subscribe. I do a podcast on Thursdays. Thank you so much for watching and sitting through this if you did, and have a nice day.